Sai-chan! Sai-chan! Oma huffed as he ran after the pale boy. Wait for me! Saihara kept on running with a blush on his face. He thought Oma was so cute when he called out his name. He was adorable in all the things he did to Saihara. He loved the boy, but just didn't know what the feelings he had meant or what to do about them. Okay, he yelled back at him, and slowed his pace. Oma quickly caught up to him and jumped at him, making him fall to the ground. Saihara groaned and wrapped his arms around Oma's waist as he sat up with Oma in his lap. Oma happily looked up at him with a giggle. Saihara blushed and pulled him closer to hide his face in his hair. Oma rolled them in the grass, rolling until Saihara was on top of him. Saihara was flustered from the position they were in, and turned his head away from Oma, making him frown. Silly Sai-chan! Oma pulled Saihara's chin close to his face. I love you! He said before he kissed him. The kiss didn't last that long, but both of them felt like they belonged like that. Together in the other's gentle embrace, full of love for the other. Neither of them knew that this was going to bond them for life.
The love they had for each other was bonding them for eternity. They didn't know what these feelings meant, but they always tried to be by each other's side. But after a while, Saihara's parents found out about this and were set on separating them. His parents then drove him away, separating the pair of lovers. Heartbroken, Oma tried his hardest to forget about him. But he would always have that photo of them playing in the field that his mom took him to before she died the following year. Saihara always thought of Oma, but when his parents were always away, and he had to move in with his uncle to help carry Gary, he eventually dedicated himself to his work and ended up forgetting about him. But always in their hearts, they wondered, am I forgetting something?
Kokichi's point of view. I looked over at Saichi, knowing he just thought of the same memory. I had no idea I forgot. All about you. I didn't finish off my thought, but he seemed to hear it anyway. He had a blush on his face, and I was certain I had one in mine as well. You guys must have remembered, Kathy said, putting her hands together. That's another thing about having a bond. She paused, walking over to stand in front of us. When one of you has an overpowering memory, the other will experience it as well. And seeing as this is the memory of when the bond was created, it is very important to remember. Kathy continued. I felt my hand get taken in Saichi's. He must know that I feel really worried about this whole thing. What if I have a past memory come up in a conversation and he had to see it as well? It's not that I don't trust him. I just don't want him to have to see things like that. So if I'm remembering something important or even traumatic, the other will see it as well at the same time? Saichi asked, rubbing his thumb over the back of my hand. I sighed and let him hold my hand in his own. Yes, that is how they work. So if that happens again, you will know what is going on. Kyoko said, putting her hands together. I felt Saichi pull me closer to him protectively. I could feel his worry about the memory of when he got bit, and when he bit me. Well, I should also mention that Saichi can heal the mark on your neck, Kokichi. He just has to lick the wound. I know that sounds a little awkward, but it will heal it, Kathy mentioned before Saichi yelped and covered his face with his hands. I looked over at him and saw him shaking. I sighed and rubbed the side of his arm, comforting him. He calmed down for a moment before Kathy spoke again. Anyway, I will let you guys go. Thanks for coming, she said with a smile. I waved to both of them before grabbing our things, leaving for the house. Saichi didn't say anything on the way home. I felt nervous about this, but didn't say anything about it. I know he is still hesitant about even touching it. I know he feels so guilty about it. He was talking in his sleep last night because of it. I won't say anything, but I was worried about him. I love him more than anything, and I hate seeing him so hateful of himself. Walking into the house, most of the members were already sleeping in their rooms. Jodie was working on something in the kitchen while we walked upstairs. Saichi went and sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. I sighed and walked over and sat next to him. It wasn't your fault, love, I whispered into his ear. I grabbed his hand and slowly moved to place his hand on the bandages on my neck. His hand flinched, but I just held his hand against my skin. I looked up at him to look at his expression. He had a blush on his face and tears glistening in his eyes. "It's okay. It's okay," I whispered, pulling him closer to my neck. He hesitated before he slowly removed the bandages and kissed the mark. I shuddered under his touch, making him flinch and start to move back, but I held his head in place. I could slowly feel his breath coming out of his parted lips before he slowly licked the wound. I felt myself sigh at the feeling before my wound healed. Almost instantly, I jumped when Saichi moved away, and my skin was completely smooth. "How?" Saichi blushed and rubbed his arm. "I had to heal myself when Kathy was teaching me how to live like this," he whispered. I knew he was chiding himself. "I love you," I said, guiding his hand to the side of my face. He looked at me hesitantly before he pulled me closer to him and kissed me. "I love you so much, Saichi."